Welcome to the PRP Aviation Podcast. This is episode number 1. I've got the owner and founder Chris Prusak here today, and we're going to discuss a little bit about the history of PRP Aviation and some other things to get us started on our podcast journey. First time doing podcasts. We are rookies at this, so it won't be perfect, I promise. We're just going to have a conversation about a few things that our clients have been kind of wanting to see put out there, and we're doing this for our clients and for the Cirrus pilots out there. We are a Cirrus training center. Before I get any further, I want to introduce Chris Prusak today. He is the founder of PRP Aviation, him and a couple others. I'm going to let him talk a little bit about the history of PRP, how I got started, and how we kind of ended up here today. Chris, welcome.
Thanks, Ethan, for having me today. So PRP Aviation 8 years ago started out as 3 families trying to own an airplane. And one of our 3 partners desperately wanted a Cirrus. And at the time, I was, quite honestly, afraid of the cost of owning a Cirrus. So I talked everyone into buying a Cessna 182, and that got us started. And the agreement was I had to teach everybody how to fly. And before we knew it, the phone was ringing because our local community found out that there was this retired Air Force guy, airline captain, teaching people how to fly.
Nice.
And we realized there might be a business here. And then our buddies saw our airplane, and the ones who were pilots were like, hey, can I buy time and fly your airplane? And we're like, wow, this airplane's making
right.
And then our partner who wanted the Cirrus, shortly after we all started flying, one thing led to another. At least once a month, maybe twice a month, he'd send me pictures of SR-22s. Yep. And before we knew it, he arranged a test flight in one. And after about 2 or 3 minutes of flying an SR-22, I'm sitting over there going, I got to have one of these.
Good.
And that led us on our path to where we are today.
And so since then, you had went to Cirrus, I think, and got the official training for Cirrus to be a CSIP. Talk a little bit about how that came full.
So I figured if I'm going to own a Cirrus, I'm going to teach it in a Cirrus. And doing a little research that led me to the Cirrus Standardized Instructor Pilot Program. So I applied before we actually bought the airplane and started to go through the interview process. And that was in April of 2018. And Cirrus said for me to be able to be accepted into the CSIP program, I needed to get 25 hours. And he suggested I go out and run the airplane. Well, I started my Cirrus training in November of 2018. I had about 150 hours in the airplane because we took delivery of our first SR-22 in August. And basically, I flew a whole bunch. But I figured if I want to own an airplane, I'm going to teach it because I love to teach just like you do.
Sure.
At the same time, to help us defray our cost of ownership of the SR-22, that's when we made the decision to embark on becoming an air carrier. And we started the certification effort to become a 135 operator, doing on-demand passenger charter in the SR-22.
I love it. And from the history that I've learned since I've been, working here with you, Chris, is your phone was ringing off the hook for charters early on. Is that right? When you had an SR-22 and they wanted to go places and you said, like, you can't really legally do it.
It was. And, as we went through the certification effort, we first looked at, should we buy a certificate? We didn't realize what that meant to the FAA. And now that we are an air carrier, we've been one for a little over 2 years. I'm really glad we did it from scratch, even though there was some frustrations of how long it took going through the process with the FAA. But I can tell you we are a smarter, which means a safer operator.
Sure.
But, there's a unique niche and so many people don't know about charter because to most people, the cost of charter is so expensive.
Right.
You don't ask about it. You think your means of travel is on Delta, American, United, JetBlue, Southwest. But the SR-22 is so much more affordable than what we would call a charter in the King Air, the Pilatus, the Citation jets. It opens up the charter experience to a much larger segment of the population. So, yeah, the phone is ringing off the hook through the SR-22, and our limitation is the number of airplanes and the number of pilots.
Sure.
We can actually get on to payroll, and it has far exceeded our expectations.
I love it. Yeah, agreed. We're staying busy with charter, and we're growing slowly as our ability allows to be able to fulfill those charters and the other stuff we have going on here at PRP, other businesses. So in the last couple of years, we've added a hangar here at Ocala Airport, KOCF, and the timeline of the hangar and the extra additions of businesses we're adding on. Talk a little bit about where we're at right now with adding the hangar on. What have that opened up for us?
So the charter endeavor opened or it mandated the requirement of having a maintenance department.
Sure.
So all of a sudden we needed to have a director of maintenance and a maintenance team. At about the same time this was occurring, we're talking late 2019, early in 2020, as COVID was starting. All these little pieces started lining up. Also, I did a lot of contract work for Sierra supporting their new delivery training experience. And I got to fly with a lot of great people all around the country, got to experience different service centers around the country. And I realized that I wanted to make sure that I could open up quality Cirrus training to more people. And the best way to do that was to open a Cirrus training center.
Great.
And at the same time, having a maintenance department, well, we might as well start fixing Cirruses. And it is our endeavor to become a full authorized service center. That process is still currently ongoing.
Very good.
And we tried to lease some space here at the Ocala Airport, and it was cost prohibitive. So we figured, we might as well just go out and build our own homes.
Good.
In 2020, we started the process of building our first facility. We're currently sitting in our fairly shiny new 15,000 square foot facility, which houses all of our operations. So when you think about PRP Aviation, we're one-stop shopping for people who own Cirrus or turboprop aircraft.
Very good. That's fantastic. And then exciting news this March, about a month ago, we had our latest edition of our business model. Really quick talk about how that evolved and the works into getting that on board.
Well, with these fancy, technically advanced aircraft, we realized we needed to control our ability to maintain avionics.
Sure.
So about a year ago, we started the process of becoming a Part 145 avionics repair station. So what we really wanted to do is we wanted to be able to be at Garmin and Avidyne and Aspen dealership. So, for example, Garmin mandates that you're a Part 145 repair station for one of their dealers. So we started that certification process, and we are excited to announce that effective early March, we earned our 145 repair station. We have a full-time avionics technician as part of our team. He's been Garmin G1000 certified for 15 plus years. He was a former military doing avionics on fighter aircraft in the Marine Corps, and he has 10 plus years experience working on Cirrus. It opens the door to, we always think of avionics shops as avionics installs, but probably the main thing is pedostatic and transponder,
yes,
RVSM certifications.
Sure. Fantastic. So excited to be where we're at today here at PRP. A lot of variety to be able to help the Cirrus community and beyond the Cirrus community with avionics, maintenance, charter as well. Leading into the military background, a little bit of our avionics technician, we have a unique background here, and I'm not going to go into detail of all of our resumes on the podcast here. You can read those on the website. But you and I both have a military background, military fighter background. We also have some other instructors with military and fighter background as well, and airline pilots. You're an active airline pilot as well as I am. So talk about what that brings to us being unique as a training center with that type of background.
Well, first, I want to point out that we have a military heritage both on the operations and the maintenance side.
Sure.
So our original director of maintenance and our lead technician both served in the Navy and the Army respectively, as well as, many of the founding instructors were retirees of the Air Force, and the majority of us are retirees of the Air Force and either retired or active airline pilots. So what that really does is it allows us to share everything we learned while we were on active duty or in the Guard and the Reserve, and share that with the aviation community. It's a different level of aviation knowledge, different types of aircraft, but because of the resources of the U.S. military, it's a depth of knowledge that sometimes you can't find it in other locations.
Sure.
And, I guess in a fun way, it's a great way for us to give back, to the aviation community, the investment they made in us, because obviously, we were taxpayer funded.
That's right.
So, when you take our aviation, specifically towards the Cirrus Training Center, the military instruction has a lot of decades, if not a century's worth of experience, and it's evolved.
Right.
And, when you look at the Air Force and the Navy and the Marine Corps, the instruction was very detailed before we flew. And more importantly, after we landed, it was, so much of the instruction was a formal debrief.
Yes.
After the flight was over. It's hard to teach people while they're trying to actively fly the airplane and to get that knowledge to take hold and to change behaviors and or to effectuate great and strong habit patterns.
Yes.
So, we are sharing that heritage, as we are growing an aviation community here at PRP Aviation, because, we do not consider ourselves a flight school or a maintenance shop. We are here to create an aviation community. And, we enjoy when our clients and our friends just stop by for a cup of coffee and hang out and, relax with us. Or at the end of the day, we have this thing that kind of looks like a bar. When you think about our heritage in the military, at the end of the flying day, we might have had a beer or two together. And what people don't appreciate is how powerful that informal instruction and mentorship that occurs outside of the flight.
Sure.
And that's part of that heritage that we're trying to, one, keep alive, but again, share that with individuals who didn't have the privilege of flying in the military.
That's right. Lots to be learned in every squadron's heritage room, any fighter squadron today, or any Air Force squadron will be able to tell you that. A lot of learning happens in the group settings, the informal settings, and that's why we've built our own heritage room for that purpose, and it's paid big dividends. A quick plug for our heritage room. Every second Wednesday night here at PRP in Ocala, we do have a safety meeting every second Wednesday night, 6 p.m. to roughly 8 p.m. We have some snacks and some drinks, and stop by if you're in the area and join us second Wednesday night of each month. We do that. Sometimes it's announced, sometimes it's not. The announcement doesn't get out there, but please come join us. Go back to the military heritage. So when I first into the company, I think it was 2019, the fall of 2019, roughly. It's about the time a couple of your daughters were getting into the Air Force Academy. We met at one of my neighbor's house, and I didn't realize you were even in town, although you had lived in Ocala much longer than I had. I had already lived in Ocala 5 years, and we happened to cross paths through a friend and one of my neighbors. And when we met, we did the eyeball to eyeball. I think I know you from the Air Force. What'd you fly again? Oh, F-15s. Oh, I did too. So I made the connection, and we actually flew together in the Air Force for about a week in Mountain Home. Actually 2 weeks in Mountain Home. When I was there from Lakenheath, I went to Mountain Home for what we call a creek exchange, where we transfer pilots from Mountain Home to Lakenheath, Lakenheath to Mountain Home, just 2 pilots at a time. And we're able to basically cross-pollinate, if you will, techniques and ideas and procedures. And I was able to fly with you, Chris, at a couple of missions there in Mountain Home, had a great time. And when we made that connection, that was really what let me know, okay, I know this guy, I've flown with him, and he's got a great vision. And it was the same vision that I was formulating at the time. You were further along in that vision of what PRP could be. I didn't know PRP existed then, but it did. It was in the very, infant stages at that time. And I was happy to know that I had somebody to partner with on this journey of giving back to the people that want to learn what I learned, and the passion that I have for flying, and the passion I know that you have for flying, and everybody that we come around that has passions for flying. We want to help embolden them on their journey, whatever it might be. Private pilot for life, instrument pilot, commercial pilot, whatever you want. We're here for them. And that's what makes it special for us as military guys who didn't grow up in the instructing community like many do. And we didn't get a chance to do that at a younger age. We instructed all of our time in the military, which was great. We had a great time. We're now able to duplicate some of that here on the general aviation side. And giving back is what makes it worthwhile to me. Seeing the solo student, or seeing we have an instrument check ride going today. So I'm excited for that. And a lot of things going on at PRP that we'll just be able to give back to our clients. One reason we're starting this podcast is because along that journey of teaching in the Cirrus and in the Cessna that we have Cirrus clients that are sending me videos and sending me podcasts. Hey, check out this and check out that. And there is a general thirst for knowledge in the Cirrus community, I think, for just a row-level conversation about different topics. And that's why we're kind of getting that content out there. We want to be a river of information, not a reservoir of information. And you, Chris, are probably the most experienced pilot that I personally know, with all of the background that you've done, your accolades in the Air Force, all the way through captain in the airlines. You've done phenomenal. And you're probably the highest time Cirrus pilot that I personally know. And so that knowledge needs to get out there. And a lot of times you and I will have conversations and I will say, Chris, I wish I had that whole thing recorded because it was just perfectly laid out. And that's what we're going to try to capture, some of those nuggets of information on a podcast type scenario that can be saved, and our clients can listen to it, and you, the listener, can listen to it and share with your Cirrus friends. It's going to be Cirrus focused in general, but not just solely for Cirrus pilots. There'll be some safety things involved that apply to all airplanes as we go through this. We're also trying to record this on video every time because I know that YouTube has a big following as well, and we're trying to get that channel out there as well. So I am recording this very crude setup this morning type of video to go along with it, and one day we'll have a YouTube channel to hopefully commensurate with this podcast. So, military background, you got a ton of information. Let's talk really quick for our kind of a subject of today of the military aspect of handling emergencies, kind of a basic thing we teach all of our students, how we handle emergencies, and we do cookie cutter just like the military does as far as how we handle it, our philosophy behind it, and it gets us through a safe outcome of basically any scenario. If the airplane is salvageable, we can get it back with this philosophy. So, Chris, talk a little bit about our emergency procedure philosophy that applies really to all airplanes.
So, going back to when you did I was student pilots in the Air Force, in our flight room, we started every morning off with what we called stand up or the formal brief. And it was about a 45-minute experience where you had all the instructors and all the students at each flight. So you had about 50 human beings in the flight. And when we got, about halfway through stand up, one of the senior instructors would do a general knowledge, or GK as they call it. And basically think of it as something done. And they'd ask some questions about limitations or the FARs or Air Force regulations or weather. And when your name got called, all right, they're putting a little external pressure on you. You had to stand up at the position of attention, and you could feel 49 pairs of eyes staring at you. And you would answer your question. Now, the GK, it wasn't a jeopardy event for the day until the standards and evaluation officer got up. And when the stand eval officer got up, and we would talk the emergency procedure of the day. And everyone's heart would race a little bit more because the Air Force, as long as I've been in it, our training has always been scenario-based. So a lot of what we see with the evolution of ACS, making the transition from PTS in Part 61 training, where we're supposed to be scenario-based training, That's what I grew up with. So I didn't even know there was a difference until I became a CFI and a double.
Right.
And so the standard valve officer would get up and he would start off and there you are. And he would lay out where the airplane was, how fast you were going, what altitude you were at, what the various instruments were displaying. And then you would hear Lieutenant Prusak. And the first thing in your brain was, oh God. And you had to stand up at the position of attention. And they had two rules. Before you talk about how you were going to handle the emergency procedure of the day, you had to recite, sir, I will maintain aircraft control, analyze situation, take appropriate action, land as soon as practical. Now, we've all heard that Air Force pilots tend to be very detail-oriented, or some people affectionately will tell us that we're anal retentive. The rule was if you could not recite those 3 bullets verbatim without stumbling, even if you got the intention of it correct, sit down. And when you were sat down, you had 49 pairs of eyes watching you fail publicly miserably. And as you were sitting down, out of the corner of your eye, you would catch your name being removed from the flight schedule for that day and put in the little penalty box and said, grab it. If you successfully repeated those 3 bullet points, you then had to repeat memory items verbatim in the same jeopardy. And then once you did those 2, then you moved on to actually explaining how you would handle the emergency procedure. As we think about the axiom of aviate, navigate, and communicate, those 3 bullet points, maintain aircraft control, analyze situation, take appropriate action, land as soon as practical, are really a subset of that aviate axiom.
Right.
Because when we're dealing with things not normal in an airplane, if we just fly the airplane, we will always walk away. Because when we look at accidents, and it doesn't matter if it is general aviation, military aviation, corporate aviation, airline aviation, the number one killer of pilots is distraction. In the case of airlines, we have a really great understanding between the cockpit voice recorder and the data recorders of what was going on and what the pilots were doing. In general aviation, we're getting better tools. G1000 is recording hundreds of parameters every second that if the data card survives, all right, they could do a pretty good reconstruction of what the airplane was doing.
We began to use FlyStow and Debrief, a fantastic tool that downloads that data and just replays it for our students. It's really good.
It's awesome. Now, what we don't have in the vast majority of general aviation aircraft is a cockpit voice recorder. We don't know exactly what the pilot is doing. So something happened when we look at fatal accidents. Something happened that distracted the pilot from just flying the airplane, maintain aircraft control. So the Air Force was so vehement about just ingraining those 3 steps into our brains. And when I was a young lieutenant, even through the majority of my military flying career, I looked at it from the form of emergency procedures. How am I handling emergency procedures? Now, over the course of the last 36 years of flying, I've had engine fires, I've had hydraulic failures, I've had flight control failures, I had a fire in the cockpit. I've had some failures in the A320 and 321 that were multiple cascading failures. Not at any case of the emergencies that I've had in my flying career did it fit the aircraft flight manual or the POH or even the simulator. It was something that had some unique twists. More importantly, since I've started teaching people how to fly, really since I became a CSIP, seriously focusing on teaching people how to fly technically advanced aircraft. I've changed some of my the words I use as a teacher. I no longer look at Section 3 of the POH or 3A of the POH, all right, emergencies or abnormals. I now look at life as when things aren't going right in the airplane, i.e., they're not normal. A complex reroute while IFR with an autopilot servo failure, I'm having to hand fly. I had a passenger on board my Cirrus who's air sick. A door pops, and I'm dealing with passengers who are afraid just because the door popped and you're feeling, air getting sucked out of the cockpit. We don't know what each of our triggers are to become distracted, but we do know that if you are distracted, you fail to maintain aircraft control.
Sure.
So I had a unique, non-normal situation in the Airbus. And as my first officer and I were dealing with it, we had multiple failures in the airplane. And all the fancy, bells and whistles going off and all the great displays on the computer, what should be telling us what's broken.
Sure.
All of a sudden in the back of my head, as we were starting to handle it, I heard the words, "Sir, I'll maintain aircraft control, analyze situation, take appropriate action, land as soon as practical."
Right.
And it was my guiding force to help manage the situation my first officer and I had to deal with, because what happened that day did not fit the book.
Right.
So, and that came from the way we were taught in the military to handle emergency procedures.
That totally makes sense. And just to reiterate, we do read Chapter 3. We understand Chapter 3s. A lot of things will happen will not be in Chapter 3. You just won't be able to find them or read up on them or even have the ability to chair fly them. You just didn't see them coming. And so those type of items are where every situation just maintain aircraft control, and you're going to at least get to the next step to be able to analyze it. But if somebody's not flying the airplane, bad things are going to happen.
I had an amazing squadron leader when I was a student pilot who pulled me aside one time and told me, "Lieutenant, it is your job to get your airplane into a landable configuration when things aren't going right and land the airplane. It is not your job to know what broke, why it broke, and how to fix it."
All right.
And, at the end of the day, a checklist is an important resource, but it is not a substitute for knowledge.
Good.
And, when we look at the Cirrus, it's got amazing resources in the form of checklists that go into the warnings, the abnormals. It'll actually give you a crew alerting system checklist. So all you have to pull up is exactly what's displayed on the crew alerting system message.
Right.
But ultimately, a checklist is not your substitute for knowledge. It is a resource to make sure that you've done everything you need to do to handle normal and non-normal situations.
Yeah, great. That's a great takeaway from the whole conversation you just had. It was really, really good. Thank you, Chris. That was a wonderful rundown of PRP operations, who we are as a company now, how we got started, and there will be more content and more episodes coming up. But today I want to talk a little bit about emergencies and that philosophy the Air Force has. Because it's important to understand where we come from and our initial reaction when something does go wrong. Just makes an aircraft control, analyze the situation, take proper action, land as soon as practical. And those items are key for any abnormal situation. All right. Thanks to our Cirrus partners for allowing us to become a Cirrus training center. And as we move forward with Cirrus, just happy to be a part of the team and continue building that brand with its extremely safe airplane. If you have a Cirrus and you need any type of avionics or maintenance work, look us up at Ocala Airport here in Central Florida, KOCF. But if you want to see any good accident investigation videos, we got a friend of ours. His name's Hoover. He's over on Pilot Debrief channel on YouTube. So Pilot Debrief, check him out. He's got some great videos. He's also an airline pilot with me in the company that I fly for. And we spent some time together to talk about some great stuff moving ahead. So he's got a really good channel to check out if you're into the accident investigation type programs. My wife's one of his biggest fans, actually. Again, the monthly safety meeting here every second Wednesday of each month, 6 p.m. Join us here in Ocala as well. Check out our website, PRP Aviation. That's Papa Romeo Papa, PRPAviation.com. And if you have a question or if you want a specific subject on a podcast, email our customer service rep, Jen. The email address is customerservice@PRPAviation.com. That's customerservice@PRPAviation.com. And just put the subject line podcast. We'll begin to answer questions as they come along, give us some content for future podcasts. Again, I'm your host, Anthony Sweeney. Thank you again for joining us here at PRP Aviation, your concierge air service provider offering air charter, serious training, maintenance, and avionics, providing a personal, reliable, professional aviation experience. Until next time.